Now, if you're ready for something a little more racy, I'll read you a passage from when I was in college. Now, this is a passage for adults, so make sure that the kids leave the room. To give you enough time, here's a short music video that we filmed in Vienna. Okay, you ready? Here we go. I made friends quickly and easily at Philadelphia's women's bars. There was a place called Sneakers not far from the river, a place on Front Street, and the PBL Club just 4 or 5 blocks away from my building. Since I was totally inexperienced at dating, it took me a while to pick up on the signals someone may have sent out indicating that she was interested. One young lady, a model and also a newcomer to Philly, invited me to her apartment for a visit. She had a gay male roommate whose boyfriend happened to stop by. She had gone into the bathroom to take a shower. Afterwards, she was standing at the sink combing her hair, stark naked. I must have been staring at her for quite some time because when I looked back at her roommate and his guest, they had begun making out and gradually taking each other's clothes off. The next thing I knew, Lori, still naked, came over, sat next to me on the sofa, and placed her hand on my thigh. She was a femme, so I guessed she was waiting for me to kiss her. As her face inched closer to mine, I summoned my courage and placed my lips lightly upon hers. Yep, I was right. She clasped my head with her hands and kissed me passionately, pressing her naked breasts against me. We repositioned ourselves so that I was on my back and she on top of me. Quite some time must have passed because the next time I looked over at the boys, they were totally naked and fully at it. I had never seen a man perform fellatio on another man before, so it was quite a learning experience for me. Suddenly I realized that I was sweating profusely, so my own clothes started coming off. What an afternoon that was! Lori and I would make love for a while, then take a break and watch the boys for inspiration. I'm sure they watched us too when they took a break. They stayed on the floor mat and we stayed on the sofa, so there was no commingling of bodily fluids. But all four of us felt that we had bonded somehow after that day. So I hope you've enjoyed our little virtual book launch. We look forward to getting back into the studio to bring you sparkly new productions of the Noshing with Nina show. Meanwhile, stay well out there. Hopefully, we'll be coming out of the other end of this pandemic soon, and we'll be out in the sunshine enjoying each other again. Here's to your health, and keep noshing. I've heard a lot of white people say that they don't understand why so many blacks are so angry all the time. So I took it upon myself to explain it to them. Granted, I can only offer my own perspective as a classical musician, but I'm sure I'm not the only one whose parents were discriminated against and then hoped that the doors would open for the next generation. I grew up listening to their complaints and heartbreak without fully understanding what racism was all about. I didn't understand that American law had kept them segregated and unequal because I naively bought the propaganda about all men being created equal. When I began to experience discrimination myself within the classical music world, it was hard to process because my parents didn't want to hear about it. Perhaps they didn't want to believe it, or perhaps they were too guilty over pressuring me to pursue a career that was closed to me. In addition to the racism, there was sexism that they hadn't prepared me for. I began to believe that my parents had actually set me up for failure. When I left America and moved to Europe, I found concert agents and managers who only did business with other men. My father was the kind of man who never really knew how to talk to whites. While I was still a teenager, he was asking me to do the talking for him. Granted, I didn't have the kind of fear that he had, but it took a while for me to get it that some white men were only interested in what a woman had to say if she was going to sleep with them. Well, I certainly was not going to do that, so I missed out on a lot of contracts as a result. It was very important for me to include details about my romantic life in the book, as well as details concerning my professional life. There was no way for me to extricate my love life from my career. Some of my career decisions were determined by who I was dating at the time. The power of love has kept me alive at times when there was no work, when I had to seriously reevaluate the practicality of a music career. Now, in the wake of the Me Too movement, I certainly hope that young females are no longer subjected to the kind of sexism that my generation was subjected to. But the COVID-19 pandemic is revealing how the African American community is so far behind when it comes to health care and income. I only hope that my story of making a way out of no way will inspire others to persevere and not take no for an answer. There are those out there who do not wish to see African Americans succeed. It may be because of insecurity or a belief that our success threatens theirs in some way. Some African Americans have grown weary of this, as my parents did. But we cannot afford the luxury of growing weary. If we are going to survive, especially now, we must keep fighting and telling the truth.